All right, the Calvin cycle. So first, in terms of reactants, what's going in and what will come out. So we have CO2 coming in. This is atmospheric CO2. This is coming from the air. We have at the end of photosystem 1, we made NADPH from NADP+, and at the bottom with ATP synthase, we made ATP by phosphorylating ADP. This this process of going down the electrochemical gradient, this was chemiosmosis, and now we have ATP molecules, we have NADPH, and we have CO2 all entering the Calvin cycle. What about our starting point? So what's already going to be there is ribulose bisphosphate. This is a 5 carbon compound, and it's going to join with carbon dioxide. Okay. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have one of the carbons from carbon dioxide. This substance itself, this compound itself, is really unstable. So it's going to fall apart and split into 3 carbon compounds. So here you see we have 5 of which are from the original ribulose bisphosphate, and one of them has a carbon from the carbon dioxide. They have a little phosphate group attached onto the end. So this is unstable. 6 carbons is unstable. It's going to fall apart, and this is where we get our phosphoglycerate, or PGAL for short, I believe. Or no, sorry, my bad, PGA. So this is our phosphoglycerate. So at this point, this is what the NADPH is going to be used for, and some of that ATP. So if we zoomed in on this, we'd have a carbon and a carbon, and a little open oxygen group. Now what's going to happen is that ATP is going to come and drop off the phosphate and attach it on temporarily, and then NADPH is going to come and it's going to switch it out, swap that hydrogen into where the phosphate is. So then what we end up getting is this phosphate going away and this alcohol group or hydroxyl group. Okay. What is important to note here is that after it gets used up, this is going to go back to NADP+, and this is going to turn into ADP. Okay. This should look very familiar because that's what we used down here and over here. So these are going to be recycled. Okay, they're going to go all the way back, all the way to ATP synthase. My bad. It's going to go all the way to photosystem 1, and ADP is going to go all the way to ATP synthase so that it can be used to make another ATP. Okay. So we use ATP, we use NADPH, Perfect. We add a little alcohol group, phosphate, and we have our carbon there from before, from the carbon dioxide, and the phosphate group. Perfect. So this is going to be our glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate. And I think depending on which resources you're using, it'll either be shortened as pgal or G3P. I grew up with G3P, that's what I'm used to. Great, so we added this alcohol group, we've turned it into glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate. Now we can combine these into a sugar. We can take both of these and turn them into a glucose. Okay, so that orange carbon, it's going to be one of them. I don't know which, doesn't really matter, but it's going to be one of them. That's just to show you where it comes from. Okay, so this is our glucose, C6H12O6 glucose. We need 2 pgal or G3P, 2 of those to make 1 glucose. 2 of those to make 1 glucose. But we are not done. We are not done. I'm just going to get rid of these arrows, they're kind of distracting. So if we look at the general photosynthesis equation, we've got 6 CO2 coming in, some water, some sun to make glucose, and some oxygen that we breathe. 6 CO2. All of this, so far, all of this is happening with 1 CO2. So you might say that 1 CO2 leads to the production of 2 pgal or G3P. Okay, but we have 6 of them in order to make glucose. So if we have 6 CO2, we are going to make a total of 12 pgal or G3P. So the question becomes, if I only need 2 to make a single glucose, where does the other 10 go? Actually let's stay in orange. Where does all of these go? All of these extra pgals or G3P. So these will go back to regenerate our ribulose bisphosphate. If we don't do this, then the cycle stops. It can't continue. Okay? So G3P, it's still a 3 carbon compound. And if you want to think of it this way, we have 10 pgals, 10 3 carbon compounds. So in total, we have 30 carbons over here. We need ribulose bisphosphate to catalyze the reaction for 6 CO2 total. 6. And these are 5 carbon compounds. So if you have 6 5 carbon compounds, that gives you 30 carbons total. So all of these 30 carbons in these 10 pgal, we're going to recycle them and turn them into 6 ribulose bisphosphate. To do this, we need the help of Rubisco, and a little bit of energy. So ATP. So again, this is coming from the light reaction. This is just an enzyme that, for our case, just chilling in the stroma, and it's going to help catalyze and turn these extra G3Ps back into ribulose bisphosphate. So we have NADP plus being recycled from their catalyzing phosphoglycerate into glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. We have ATP being recycled over here from recycling ribulose bisphosphate, and ribulose bisphosphate gets recycled again to start the cycle all over again. If we did turn all 12 pgal or G3P into sugar, you might argue that we can make six glucose molecules. Well, that seems much more efficient than making just one. But then our cycle stops and we can't continue. So we don't want this. It doesn't help us as much. So one last note, because all of the energy is coming from our ATP molecules, we don't need any sun. We don't need any sun, which means it can occur at night. It happens all day. Happens during the day, happens at night. It doesn't stop. It just keeps on chugging. So that is the Calvin cycle in a nutshell.